Hello students. Now I'm Monica Rathi and here we will discuss about 9th class science chapter number 3, that is atoms and molecules. Now the very first topic of this chapter is the law of chemical combination. This basically we are having two laws of chemical combination and those two laws are very important in the field of chemistry. So let's start with the laws. Basically, there are two types of laws of chemical combination. One is the law of conservation of mass and second is the law of constant proportion. So let's discuss about the very first law, that is law of conservation of mass. So this law is given by Antoine L. Lavoisier. So this law states that mass can neither be created nor destroyed in a chemical reaction. We know that whenever a reaction occurs, so it will have some products and it will have some reactants. So according to this law, mass can neither be created nor destroyed. That means if a chemical reaction occurs, so neither the mass is created here and nor it is destroyed. That means the total mass of the product, it will always remains equal to the total mass of reactants. Mass will never change. Let's consider this thing with the help of an example. In a reaction of hydrogen and chlorine, let's consider the example of hydrogen and chlorine. Here hydrogen, when it reacts with chlorine, suppose that we are having 2 gram of hydrogen and 71 grams of chlorine. Hydrogen and chlorine help react to give you HCl, that is hydrogen chloride or hydrochloric acid. Now the mass of this is 73 grams. That means here we can say that when these two substances, they are the reactants and this one is the product. When the reactants are adding, so the mass will also get added up. So this will also become 73, which is equal to the mass of the product. So from this we can conclude that mass of the reactant and mass of the product, it remains same. This is stated by the law of conservation of mass. One more example we can have. Suppose you have taken a conical flask in which you have taken a solution of sodium chloride. Then you have taken a test tube which is kept inside this flask. This test tube is containing silver nitrate, that is AgNO3. I have tied this test tube with the help of a thread. Now in the beginning, when we weighed this particular conical flask, so we'll note down its reading that what weight it was having. Now when you will lift this thread, so what will happen? This test tube will get tilted in this conical flask and this silver nitrate, it will get mixed with sodium chloride and the reaction between silver nitrate and sodium chloride will occur. After reaction also, when you will weight this conical flask, again the weight will remain same as it was earlier before reaction. So from this we can conclude that the mass of this conical flask before reaction and after reaction, it remains same. So this concludes that in a chemical reaction, mass can neither be created nor destroyed. This was about the first law. If we discuss about the second law, that is law of constant proportion. So this law is proposed by Joseph Proust. This law states that in a chemical compound, the elements are always present in definite proportion by mass. In our previous chapter, we have studied that what basically the compounds are. We all know that when two or more elements, they combine in a fixed proportion by mass, then we get compound. So it states that in a chemical compound, elements are always present in a definite proportion by mass. For example, let's consider the example of water. Now, in water, what all is there? Hydrogen and oxygen. That is when hydrogen and oxygen, they react, so you will get water. Now, we know that the mass of one hydrogen atom is 1. Okay. So, mass of two hydrogen atom, here it will be 2. We know that mass of oxygen atom is 16. So here hydrogen and oxygen, they mix in the ratio 2 is to 16, but we have to write it in the whole number, simple whole number. So when we divide it by 2, so what I'll get? 1 is to 8. So it indicates that when water will be formed, that is when 1 gram of hydrogen, when it reacts with 8 gram of oxygen, then you will get water. whether it is a rainwater, whether it is a sea water, whether it is a river water, this proportion, it will always remain same. That means if I am taking 1 gram of hydrogen, so I have to combine it with 8 grams of oxygen. Okay. In other terms, suppose if I am taking 2 grams of hydrogen, then it will get combined with its double, that is 16 grams of oxygen. In the similar way, when you will take 3 grams of hydrogen, so it will get combined with 24 grams of oxygen. That means this, if you convert it in simple whole number, so all the time what you will get, 1:8. That means hydrogen and oxygen, they always combine in a fixed proportion, that is 1:8. Next is the atomic theory. In the beginning, an Indian philosopher, not a scientist, an Indian philosopher, Maharshi Kannan, in 400 BC, he postulated that if matter keeps on dividing, then a stage will come when the particle obtained by division would no longer be further divided, and he called that particle as Parmanu. Then another philosophers, they were the Greek philosophers, that is Democritus and Leucippus. They also stated the same thing, but instead of Parmanu, they called it atom. Then in 808, a scientist named Dalton, he come up with his experimental setups. Then he come up with the experimental proof, and he also stated that a smallest particle will exist which no longer be further divided, and he also called that particle as atom. Now then Dalton, then he gave his own theory and he proposed number of postulates on which are based on atoms. So now we'll discuss about the Dalton's atomic theory, which is the basis for the concept of atoms and molecules. Rather, it is that most of his postulates didn't proved to be correct at the end, but still his theory is very important. It plays a very important role in the field of chemistry. So Dalton, in his atomic theory, he stated that atom is the smallest indivisible particle. Indivisible means this is the smallest particle which further no longer be able to divide. Now, this word atom, it is obtained from the Greek word that is atomos, which means indivisible. Now, if we talk about the postulates of Dalton's atomic theory, so in his first postulate, Dalton states that matter is composed of very tiny particles, and he called those particles as atom. So according to his theory, that the very tiny particles, atom, that is the smallest unit of a matter is atom. Now in his second postulate, he states that atoms are indivisible particles which cannot be created or destroyed. That means indivisible, so it is clear from its first postulate only. He stated that the atoms, we cannot create an atom nor we can destroy an atom. Now in his third postulate, he states that atoms of a given element are identical in mass and chemical properties. He states that if you will talk about the atom of a hydrogen, so every atom of a hydrogen, that will be identical in terms of mass and chemical properties. Later on we come to know that this postulate is wrong. We'll discuss about that also in our next chapter. Next is the atoms of different elements have different masses and chemical properties. He stated that if you are having two atoms, suppose one is of hydrogen, other is suppose of oxygen. So he stated that if you have two atoms, so of different elements, then all those atoms will differ in their mass and their chemical properties. Next one, that atoms combine in the ratio of small whole number to form compounds. As we have discussed, as we have taken the case of water, that they will combine in the ratio 1:8. So this postulate is about this thing only. Next one, the relative number and kinds of atoms are constant in a given compound. That means the number and the kind of atoms which are present in a given compound, they will always remain constant. So these were the postulates of Dalton's atomic theory. Next is the drawbacks of Dalton's atomic theory. In his first postulate, he has stated that matter is composed of very tiny particle called atom, which cannot be further divided. But this is wrong. That atom is no longer considered as the smallest indivisible particle. That means atom can further be split up as electrons, protons, and neutrons. So this is not the indivisible particle. It was clear. This thing we'll discuss in our next chapter in detail. Next one, that atoms of a given element are identical in mass and chemical properties, but this is also proved to be wrong, because atoms of same elements can have different masses also, and we call it as isotopes. If you talk about the isotopes of chlorine, so isotopes, one is having the mass of 35 unit and other is having the mass of 37 unit. So this postulate also appears to be wrong. Sorry, not appears. This postulate also proved to be wrong. Next one, atoms of different elements can have same masses. That means when we discuss about isomers, at that time this point will become clear to you. That means if we will talk about the two different atoms of two different elements, then also they can have the same masses. For example, the atoms of potassium and calcium, they both are having the mass number of 40. Next one, the substances made up of same kind of elements have different properties. It was given here that the kind of atoms are constant in a given compound. This also proved to be wrong, because if we talk about elements, if we talk about the substances which are made up of same kind of elements, then also they can have different properties. For example, graphite and diamond, they both are made up of carbon, but still they are having different properties. Next one, the ratio in which the different atoms combine to form a compound is fixed and integral part, but may not be simple. Here he has stated that they will combine in the ratio of small whole number, but this whole number will not be simple. If we talk about the sugar, so it is having the formula C12H22 and O11. That means here they are present in the ratio 12:22:11, which is not a simple. So this was about the drawbacks of your Dalton's atomic theory. Next is, what is an atom? So it is clear from the Dalton's atomic theory that atom is the smallest particle of a matter. So we can say that the atom is the basic building block of any matter. That means all the matter that is made up of a basic building block, which is known as atom. Now we can say that atom is the smallest particle of an element which can take part in a chemical reaction. Whenever a reaction occurs, at that time the smallest element, atom, it takes part and it initiates our chemical reaction. Atom is made up of electrons, protons and neutron, where electron is the negatively charged particle, proton is the positively charged particle, and neutron is having no charge, that is, it is neutral. So if you divide an atom further, so it will split up into electrons, protons and neutrons. An atom, it comprises of electrons, protons and neutrons. Now how big are atoms? That means what about the size of an atom? How we will measure the size of an atom? The size of an atom is very small. That means with our naked eyes we cannot see it. Even with the number of powerful microscopes, we cannot see an atom. A special type of microscope is used to see the magnified images of an atom, and that microscope is known as STM, that is scanning tunneling microscope. It is a type of powerful electron microscope which can give us the magnified image of an atom. Now if we talk about the size, that how we will measure the size of an atom, the size of an atom is obtained from its radius. That means the radius of an atom will give us will tell us about the size of an atom. Now the size of an atom is basically measured in nanometer, that is represented by nm, and 1 nanometer is equals to 10 to the power minus 9 meter. That means when 10 to the power 9 nanometers, then they will combine, at that time will get 1 meter. So basically the size of an atom is measured in nanometer. If we compare about the size of different atoms, now the smallest atom which is present is our hydrogen atom, and its size is 10 to the power minus 10 meter. The size of a molecule of water is 10 to the power minus 9 meter. The size of hemoglobin, which is present in our blood, is 10 to the power minus 8 meter. If we talk about the grain of a sand, even its size is 10 to the power minus 4 meter, and is 10 to the power minus 2, and the watermelon seed, it is 10 to the power minus 1. So these are some of the sizes. By visualizing these sizes, you can have an idea that how small 1 nanometer, that is 10 to the power minus 9 meter, would be. Next is the symbol of an atom. That means how basically we will represent the atom of a particular element. So we have some specific symbols for that. Now, in the beginning, Dalton was the first scientist who used the symbols, but the symbols of Dalton were circular in shape and they were quite difficult to memorize. Symbols must be as such that it is quite easy for someone to learn, but the Dalton symbol was very difficult to memorize. Suppose few example of Dalton symbols are, if in a circular, if he has written C, so it means carbon, iron, silver. A circle with a dot inside represents hydrogen. A blank circle represents oxygen. A circle which is totally black, that represents carbon. So such type of symbols are quite difficult to learn, hence symbols were not selected, were not universally accepted. Next one is the alchemist symbols. The symbols of this scientist were very strange, as if he is hiding something in his symbols and quite difficult to memorize also, hence they were also not universally accepted. Then later on, the J.J. Berzelius, his symbols were universally accepted, and we are using the symbols of this particular scientist in our present times also. The symbols that we are using right now for representing an atom, they were given by J.J. Berzelius. Now, its symbols were quite easy to learn because its symbols are obtained from the first or the second or the third letter of the name of a element. For example, aluminium. So Al, first letter is always taken as capital and second letter is always small. So for representing aluminium, he used Al. A is capital, L is small. For representing cobalt, he again used C and O. For representing hydrogen, he simply used H. For representing oxygen, he used O. For representing chlorine, he used first and third letter, that is C, L. So in this way he gives number of symbols. One more thing, that J.J. Berzelius, his symbols, either they were obtained from their modern names or they were obtained from the Greek or Latin names. So this copper, gold, silver and iron, they have obtained its symbol from their Latin names. That means copper, according to our theory, so it must be Co, but instead of Co, we are writing it as Cu because the Latin name for copper is cuprum. From there, he got its symbol as Cu. Next is the gold, its Latin name is aurum, so it got its symbol as Au. Silver, its Latin name is argentum, hence it gets its symbol from the first and the third letter. In the similar way, iron, it gets its symbol from its Latin name ferrum, that is F and E. So in this way, the elements obtain their symbol from either their modern names or their Latin names or their Greek names. Next is atomic mass. What basically the atomic mass is? The mass of an atom, it is known as atomic mass. That means it is clear from the name, atomic means atom and mass. That is the mass of an atom is termed as atomic mass. If we consider the example of hydrogen, then the mass of hydrogen atom in terms of gram, it comes to be 1.672 into 10 to the power minus 24 gram. But such type, basically we are having 117 elements, so it's quite difficult for one to memorize the masses of this type. And second thing, it's quite difficult to measure such type of masses also. So in order to overcome the problems related to such type of masses, what we did, that we represent the atomic masses in terms of their relative masses. Instead of using it as it is, we will use a relative mass here. That means in comparison to some other reference atom. For example, if we talk about, I can say that suppose a boy Rahul, he is 3 years younger than his sister Sita. Okay. What I said, that Rahul is 3 years younger than his sister Sita. That means here I have not specified the Rahul's age clearly. I have expressed his age in terms of some other. That means in relation to his sister. So the same thing will happen here also. That instead of specifying their mass as it is, will represent their mass in terms of some reference atom. So that reference atom is selected as the carbon 12 atom, that is C12. Carbon atom is selected as the reference atom, and C12 atom has been assigned an atomic mass of 12 atomic mass unit. That means this one atom of C12 has been assigned a mass of 12 units. Now, one atomic mass unit. Earlier we used to represent this atomic mass in terms of AMU, that is atomic mass unit, but nowadays we are representing it in terms of U, that is unified mass. Unified mass. Okay. So this unified mass is represented by the letter U. Now 1 U or 1 AMU, it is equal to mass of 1 C12 atom divided by 12. This is your 1 atomic mass unit. That 1 atomic mass unit is the 1 by 12th of a mass of a 1 C12 atom. Now how we will calculate the relative atomic mass from this? If we want to calculate the relative atomic mass of an element, so we will calculate it as the average mass of one atom of an element divided by 1 by 12th into mass of 1 C12 atom, that is divided by 1 AMU. For example, if we want to calculate the mass of one hydrogen atom, mass, that is, I am talking about the relative atomic mass. Whenever we talk about the atomic mass, that means we are talking about the relative atomic masses. So the relative atomic mass of hydrogen, it comes to be 1 unit. Now how it comes to be 1 unit? The average mass of one atom of element, that is if we are calculating it for hydrogen, so average mass of one atom of hydrogen, here it is 1.672 into 10 to the power minus 24 grams. This is, and 1 by 12th into mass of 1 C12 atom, it is 1.66 into 10 to the power minus 24 grams. On solving it, approximately you will get answer to be 1. So we can say that the relative mass of one atom of hydrogen or the atomic mass of hydrogen, it comes to be 1 U. If we talk about the other elements, so few elements I have mentioned here with their atomic masses. Hydrogen is having 1.008, that is its approximate value is 1. Helium 4.003, its approximate value is 4. In the similar way, lithium as 7, beryllium as 9, boron as 11, carbon as 12, nitrogen as 14 and oxygen as 16. That means these masses, they are quite easy to learn also. So instead of using it as it is, we'll measure it in terms of relative atomic masses. Next is, how do atoms exist? That means we have studied about the mass of atom, we have studied about the size of an atom. Now the question arises that how basically an atom exists. Basically the atoms of most of the elements are not able to exist independently. Means one atom independently cannot exist. Only of a few elements independent atoms can exist, otherwise not. Atoms form molecules and ions. Why they cannot exist? Because of their instability. in order to gain stability, they will either exist in the form of molecules or ions. Only the noble gases are there which can exist independently because of their stable nature, and few of the examples of noble gases is helium, neon, argon, etc. Only the noble gases can exist independently because of their stability. Now if we talk about sodium, now sodium cannot exist alone. Why it cannot exist alone? Because of its stability. Now sodium in its cells, the cell is having 2 number of electrons, this is having 8 and this one is having 1. That means in order to gain the stability, all the elements either they will require to attain the stable configuration. Now according to the stable configuration, this last cell, at least this last shell, it must have only 8 electrons, but here it is having 1 extra electron. So in order to gain stability, it has to lose this electron. Now if it loses this electron, so it get a positive charge and it will be stable at that time. It will gain stability and will be represented as Na positive. So this is stable, it can exist but in the form of its ion. Now if we talk about chlorine, in its last shell it is having 7 electrons but it requires 8. So in order to, when it will have 8 electrons in its last shell, then only it will become stable. So in order to have 8 electrons, it is having 7, so how it can have 8 electrons? If it gains 1 electron from outside, so on gaining 1 electron it will become stable, but when an element it gains an electron, so it will get a negative charge. So chlorine can exist like this in the form of its ion. Now why they will develop a positive charge or a negative charge, or why they are gaining an electron or losing an electron in order to attain the stability? One more thing can have, if a hydrogen is there, it is having 1 atom in its valence shell, sorry 1 electron in its valence shell. So in order to gain this stability, the 2 hydrogen atoms combine to produce H2. That means hydrogen, you will never find a hydrogen atom as H. Always 2 atoms will get combined to give a molecule of hydrogen, that is H2. An atom exists in the form of H2 instead of H. Now what basically the molecules are? The smallest particle of an element or a compound which exists independently. Molecule is the smallest particle or of an element or a compound which can exist independently. Here H2, this is the molecule. Why? Because it can exist independently. Hydrogen cannot exist independently as this. It can exist independently in form of its molecule. Now what basically the molecular formula is? Molecular formula is the symbolic representation of the actual number of atoms. That means it represents that how many atoms will combine together to produce one molecule. That means how many atoms are combining together to attain the stability, and that is its molecular formula. Now in order to specify the molecular formula, the term atomicity must be clear to us. So atomicity represents the number of atoms constituting a molecule. That means how many atoms they will combine to give you a molecule. Now depending on the molecular formula, we can divide the elements as diatomic, as triatomic, as tetraatomic, and even as polyatomic. If the number of atoms present in a molecule, they are 2, as it clear from the name, di means 2. If the number of atoms present in a molecule are 2, then that element, that molecule is termed as diatomic. If the number of atoms present are 3, as it clear from the name, tri. If the number of atoms are 3, then it will be triatomic. And tetra means 4. That means if the number of atoms are 4, then a molecule is considered as a tetraatomic. The example of diatomic is O2, H2, Cl2. And the example of triatomic is O3, that is ozone. Tetraatomic is P4, that is phosphorus. Even a molecule can exist in the form of polyatomic also. That means which is having more number of atoms, greater than 2 or 3. So example of that we can have is S8, that is sulfur. Now, this was about molecular formula. Now, next is the molecule. We have discussed about the molecule. Now, molecule can be framed with the help of electrons, or it can be formed by compounds. What basically the elements and the compounds we have discussed in our previous chapter. So, when the atoms, when a molecule, it comprises of same type of atoms, then it will be your molecule of element. For example, oxygen. So it comprises of 2 atoms of oxygen only. When we talk about hydrogen, so it comprises of 2 atoms of hydrogen. That means the atoms they are comprising are of same type. So such a molecule is made from element. So we can call it as the molecule of element. But if a molecule comprising of different types of atoms, for example, water. So it comprises of 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. For example, carbon dioxide. It comprises of 1 atom of carbon and 2 atoms of oxygen. If we talk about ammonia, so it comprises of 1 atom of nitrogen and 3 atoms of hydrogen. That means a 1 molecule. If we talk about the 1 molecule of water, so it comprises of different types of atoms. So such a molecule is termed as the molecule of compound. Next we talk about ions and the ionic compounds. So let's discuss about ions, what basically the ions are. When an atom gains or loses electron is called an ion. I have explained also that why an atom will gain or lose electron in order to gain the stability. So in order to gain a stability, either an atom will gain electron or will lose electron on the basis of their octet rule or duplet rule. That also we will discuss in detail in our next chapter. So these ions, they can be positively charged or negatively charged. I have given you the example of chlorine. So chlorine, in order to gain the stability, it will accept 1 electron. So it will accept 1 electron. I will show you that how its configuration is 2, 8 and 7. It is having 7 electrons in its valence shell. So in order to gain the stability, it requires the number of electrons here to be 8. So in order to gain this stability, it will gain 1 electron. So when it will gain 1 electron, so the charge on chlorine here it will be negative, and the negatively charged are known as anions. And if we talk about, I have given the example of sodium also, that it was having the charge of 2, 8 and 1. In order to have the stability, it needs to lose this electron. So when it loses this electron, it requires a charge of positive. It requires a positive charge, hence it is known as cation. So any atom, if it loses 1 electron, so it gains a positive charge and known as cation. And if an atom gains electron, so it will have a negative charge and it will known as anion. And I have explained also that why they will lose or gain electron because of the stability. Now the property of the, let's talk here also, example of potassium. So a potassium, in order to gain stability, it will lose electron, and chlorine, in order to gain stability, it will gain electron. So on gaining it requires a negative charge, and on losing it requires a positive charge. Now if we talk about the ions and their parent element, so the property of ions and their element will differ. If we talk about chlorine gas, so this chlorine is a poisonous gas, but when we talk about the chloride ion, that is Cl negative ion, so its property will be different from chlorine because this chloride ion is not a poisonous gas. Next is about the ionic compounds, that what basically the ionic compounds is. If a compound comprises of both cations and anions, then such a compound is known as ionic compound. For example, if we talk about sodium chloride, so the charge on sodium is positive and charge on chlorine is negative. So it contains cation, that is the positive charge, and anion, that is the negative charge. If we talk about potassium chloride, so charge on potassium is positive, charge on chlorine is negative. In the similar way, sodium sulfate and calcium oxide. how they will acquire. Suppose calcium is there. Calcium is having 2 electrons in its valence shell. We talk about oxygen, so it is having 6 electrons in its valence shell. So in order to gain this stability, it requires to lose 2 electrons and it requires to gain these electrons. So what they will have? They will combine together. This calcium will give its electrons to oxygen and oxygen will gain its electrons, comprising in a resultant compound, that is calcium oxide. Next is the polyatomic ion. Here so we have talked about the single charge. But if a group of atoms carrying a charge, here so single atoms were carrying a charge, but if a group of atoms carry any charge, so such an ion is known as polyatomic. If we talk about the hydroxyl ion, that is OH. So the complete charge on this complete is negative. If we talk about here SO4, so it is having a complete charge of -2. If we talk about CO3, so it is having a complete charge of -2. In the similar way, NH4, that is ammonia, it is having a complete charge of positive. So this was about a polyatomic ion. Next is chemical formula. That basically the chemical formula is the symbolic representation of its composition. That means a molecule or a compound which is formed. So its formula will represent its complete composition. For example, H2O. So it represents that hydrogen and oxygen, they are combining together to form water. Second thing, the number of atoms of hydrogen are 2 and the number of atoms of oxygen are 1. So this is the chemical formula which give you the complete information about the composition. Next one is valency. Valency is the combining capacity of an element. Basically the valency of an element will specify that how it will combine with the other elements. For example, calcium and oxygen. The valency of calcium is 2 and the valency of oxygen is also 2. Because the number of electrons in the valence shell of a calcium is 2 and the number of electrons in the valence shell of oxygen is 6. So they will become stable or they will form a compound when it will lose its electrons and when oxygen will gain electrons. So it needs to lose 2 electrons and it needs to gain 2 electrons. So in order to complete their requirement, they both will combine together. So calcium will lose its electrons and give its electrons to oxygen and oxygen will take electrons from calcium. So basically if we'll talk, so all the metals, they have a tendency to lose electrons and all the non-metals, they will gain electrons. So here calcium is a metal and oxygen is a non-metal. So every time when a metal, when it combines with a non-metal, so the name of the metal will always comes in the beginning and the name of the non-metal will be after metal. If we talk about the combination of two metals, two non-metals. So when two non-metals wants to combine, so they will not lose or gain electron, they always combine by electron sharing. They will share electrons among themselves and then form a compound. If we talk about the valencies of some of the common ions, so valency, we can have a valency up to 4. Valency 1, 2, 3 and 4. If a element is there, suppose sodium loses 1 electron and calcium gains 1 electron. They have a tendency to lose 1 electron and it has a tendency to gain 1 electron. So their valency is 1. Irrespective of the charge, irrespective of the ion, that is it is a cation or a anion, its valency will be 1. In the similar way, potassium, silver and copper, they all are having the valency of 1, and bromine, iodine and hydrogen, they are having a valency of 1. One more thing, hydrogen has a tendency to have to become cation also and to become anion also, because it is having 1 electron in its valence shell. So to obtain this stability, so it can gain 1 electron to form it 2, or it can lose 1 electron so that the number of valence electrons in its outer shell become 0. So because of it, it can be in the form of H positive or in the form of H negative. If in a compound it comes in the beginning, that means in that compound it has lose one electron, but if a hydrogen it comes at the end, at that time it has gain one electron. So it can have both the situation. Magnesium, calcium, zinc oxide and sulfide, they are having a valency of 2. In the similar way, aluminium, iron and nitride, they are having a valency of 3. If we talk about the valency 4, so carbon is having a valency of 4 because it is having 4 electron in its valence shell. So either it can lose 4 electrons or it can gain 4 electrons. So carbon is having a valency of 4. Now in order to write the chemical formula, we are having two rules. The first rule, it says that valencies or charge must be balanced. This rules will be clear to you in the example when we'll write the chemical formulas. That means valencies or charges, they must be balanced. For example, here calcium, its charge was to positive, its charge was to negative. So their charges are balanced, then only they will combine together. When a compound consists of metals and non-metals, then a name or the symbol of the metal is written first. As I have stated you that when a metal and non-metal, they will combine together. So all the time the name of a metal will be written first. So this was about the rules for writing a chemical formula. Next is that how we will write the chemical formula with the help of example we'll explain. So in the beginning we'll write the elements and then below them we'll write their valencies. For example, if we want to form HCl, so that will comprise of hydrogen and chloride ion. So hydrogen and chlorine, like this we'll write. Below this hydrogen we'll write the valency of hydrogen, which is 1. No need to mention the charge, that is the cation or anion, simply write their valency whether it is 1, 2, 3 or 4. Chlorine is having the valency of 1. Now what we have to do, we have to cross multiply. We'll multiply its valency with hydrogen and the valency of hydrogen with chlorine. So when you will multiply, so this will what you will get, HCl. When the valency is 1, so we'll not write it. For example, second example, that is ammonia, that is NH3. So nitrogen is having a valency of 3, hydrogen is having a valency of 1. So again on cross multiplying it, nitrogen gets multiplied with 1 and hydrogen get multiplied with 3. So what you will get, NH3. That means 1 atom of hydrogen and 3 atoms of, 1 atom of nitrogen and 3 atoms of hydrogen. This was the very first rule, that valencies must be balanced. So when 3 atoms of hydrogen, they will get combined with 1 atom of nitrogen, then only their valencies will become balanced. In the similar way, if we talk about HO, that is water, so it will have hydrogen and oxygen. The valency of hydrogen is 1 and the valency of oxygen is 2. So again on cross multiplying, hydrogen will get multiplied with 2. So H2 and O. This is how water molecule will be formed. Next is calcium chloride. Calcium is having a valency of 2 and chloride is having a valency of 1. So again on cross multiplying, calcium is 1 and chloride is 2. That is calcium chloride. One thing that I have stated you, that when a metal and a non-metal, they will get combined, so always the name of a metal will come in the beginning. One more thing, I have stated you that if the valency of hydrogen, you will take it as positive. If the charge on hydrogen, you will take it as positive. So always it will be in the beginning. Here hydrogen has lose 1 electron, have given 1 electron to chlorine. So it is written in the beginning. But here the charge on nitrogen is positive and charge on hydrogen is negative. That means here hydrogen has gained it. So hydrogen is written at the end. This thing also I have stated. If we talk about calcium sulfate, so this is a complete ion, SO4, which is having a charge of 2, and calcium alone is having a charge of 2. So on cross multiplying, their charge is balanced, so no need to write that balanced charge, simply will write CaSO4. If we talk about potassium and sulfide, that is potassium is having a charge of 1 and SO4 is having a charge of 2. Again on cross multiplying. Now potassium gets multiplied with 2, so we'll write K2SO4. If valencies are same, so we'll not mention it. Next is Ca and OH, that is hydroxyl ion. It is having a charge of 1, calcium is having a charge of 2. On cross multiplying, what you will get? Calcium 1, but this OH whole twice will be 2. So because of which we have represented it with a bracket. It shows that one atom of calcium, it gets combined with the 2 atoms of OH. So this was about the few chemical formulas, and this way you can practice number of chemical formulas. Next is molecular mass. We have studied about the molecular formula. That molecular formula will help us in calculating the molecular mass. The mass of a molecule of a compound is called a molecular mass. That means atomic mass used to give you the mass of an atom. But when we talk about molecule, that means it can have number of atoms of same element or of different element or of compound also. So in that situation, the complete mass of a molecule is known as its molecular mass. Now the question arises that how we can calculate the molecular mass. So it is the sum of all the atomic masses of all the elements present in a molecule. That means the number of elements which are present in a molecule, if we'll add up the complete mass of all those elements, then the mass that we'll get is our molecular mass. For example, it's calculated for few molecules. If we talk about water molecule, so water is now, and for calculating the molecular mass, first of all the molecular formula must be clear to us. If we know the molecular formula, then only we can calculate the molecular mass. So the molecular formula for water is H2O. That means it is having 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. So how will calculate its molecular mass? 2 into atomic mass of hydrogen, because hydrogen is having 2 atoms, plus 1 into atomic mass of oxygen, because oxygen atom is 1 only. So hydrogen, atomic mass of hydrogen is 1 and atomic mass of oxygen is 16. So 2 into 1 is 2 plus 16. So 2 plus 16 will get 18 units. That is 18 U. U here is your unified mass. If we talk about CH4, so it is having 1 atom of carbon and 4 atoms of hydrogen. So we'll multiply 1 with the atomic mass of carbon, and atomic mass of hydrogen is multiplied with 4. On solving it, the atomic mass of carbon is 12 and atomic mass of hydrogen is 1. So on solving it, we'll get it to be 16 U, that is unified mass. If we talk about HNO3, that is nitric acid, so it is having 1 atom of hydrogen, 1 into H. 1 atom of nitrogen, so 1 into N, plus 3 atoms of oxygen, so 3 into O. So here H represents the number of atomic mass of hydrogen, N represents the atomic mass of nitrogen, and O means we have to write the atomic mass of oxygen. So atomic mass of hydrogen is 1, atomic mass of nitrogen is 14, and atomic mass of oxygen is 16. On solving, we'll get it to be 63 U. If we talk about glucose, so glucose is having the molecular formula C6H12 and O6. That means it is having 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of hydrogen and 6 atoms of oxygen. So how will calculate? We'll multiply the atomic mass of carbon with 6 plus atomic mass of hydrogen with 12 plus atomic mass of oxygen with 6. That means we'll calculate their atomic masses separately and then finally add them. So on solving it, you'll get 180 U. So here we have explained few of the examples related to the molecular mass, that how you can calculate it. With this, we finish with the theory portion of this chapter. About the mole concept, we'll discuss in our next video. So thank you.